Our gospel reading comes from the Gospel of John, chapter 21, 1 through 19. Now, if you remember last week, we covered Doubting Thomas. And at the end of Doubting Thomas, John said that all that had been written, even though more could be written, all that had been written had been included so that you might know that Jesus is the Messiah. And then he adds this postlude. This postlude is not to convince you that Jesus is the Messiah, but to understand what that means to you. What should we do if Jesus is the Messiah? What should we be doing with our lives? If we have heard the good news, if we have experienced Jesus' grace and love, where are we to go? What are we to be doing? Well, what we have in this postlude is Peter, along with others who had been fishing with him at the very beginning, have gone back to fishing. They've gone back to their lives. The whole religious experience was interesting and it shaped their personal relationship with God, but now they're back to doing what they did before Jesus showed up on the shore. Jesus shows up on the shore again. And they're back to doing the same old, same old. And Jesus says, how's that working for you? That wonderful definition of stupidity. Doing the same thing over and over and over again and expecting a different result. They're going back to their life before Jesus, expecting it to be different and not living differently, not acting and behaving differently. He told them that they would become fishers of people, that they would catch people for the Lord, and yet now they're out fishing for fish. And so Jesus says, cast your net on the other side. Change what you are doing and follow God instead. Not my will, but thy will be done. We are on a boat, all of us. And there are two choices. We can fish on the side of our will, or we can fish where God wishes us to. We can follow institutions and leaders and agendas and plans that we make or that have been given to us, the American dream, whatever that might be. We can follow that. And we will reap what generations have always reaped. Struggle, hardship, some successes, some glory, but a mixed bag. And in the end, we will die and it will all be gone. Or we can do God's will and fish according to God's plan. And we will see that the bread and the loaves is multiplied. We will see that one stone in the water creates a ripple affecting all the way to the outer banks. We will find that God's will is interconnected to all of creation. Will we fish on the other side? When they throw their nets on the other side, of course, there's more fish than they can handle, and they call people over. And then Peter does what anybody who usually swims never does. And that is that Peter was stripped down to fish because of the smell of the fish, because of the water, everything else. He had stripped down. But now he puts clothes on to jump into the water. Now, why would anybody put clothes on to jump into the water, since anyone who's ever gone into the water with clothing knows that clothing weighs you down, pulls you down? John is representing Peter's shame. Just as Adam and Eve clothed themselves when God came into the garden and they were found out, Peter, who denied Jesus, encounters Jesus once again at the shore in the fishing, and Who said to go fishing? It was Peter that said, let's go fishing. Peter led them to go back to where they were. He is embarrassed. He is ashamed because he has been found wanting. Not once, not twice, but 3 times he has been found wanting. His denial, his inability to find Jesus and proclaim that Jesus had risen even after he saw the empty tomb. And now here he is. He led the disciples to go back to life before Jesus. He covers himself up. And there's Jesus, who's made breakfast. And there's burning coals. Burning coals are significant because of what happens later, but also because of Isaiah. When Isaiah encounters God, he says, I'm a man of unclean lips among a people of unclean lips. And a tongue is placed into the coals so that he might be purified. Jesus goes and now will purify Peter. And Jesus will ask Peter, do you unconditionally love me? Agape. Peter will respond, Jesus, I care for you. Phileo. Jesus will again ask, do you unconditionally love me? Agape. Peter says, I've already said, I care for you deeply. Phileo. And Jesus says, Peter, do you care for me? And Peter says, yes, I've told you I care for you. And Jesus says, if you love me, if you care for me, if I am the source of your joy, of your heart, then tell others about me. Feed my lambs. Tend my sheep. Feed my sheep. Raise them up into what I have taught you. Tend them, care for them, feed them, so that they might know the joy you have in me. And you say that you care for me, but you're not ready to give me unconditional love. But I tell you this, Peter, there will come a time when people will grab you by the belt and yank you up and take you where you do not want to go. To me, an image of a rebellious 2-year-old who starts running and going someplace that their parents know is harmful, and they grab them by their pants to hold them back and to pick them up. But the kid still wants to go, and no, we're going this way. And grabs them and picks them up. Peter will be picked up, and Peter, sure enough, will be picked up and taken to Rome. And then it ends beyond the lectionary reading by Peter going, now what about this beloved disciple over here? What about this guy? What about this guy? And he says, don't worry about him. He will follow me in his own way. And this kind of points to the idea that this beloved disciple is John of Patmos, and will be the one who lives the longest to proclaim the revelation of God. The question, therefore, to us, does our encounter with Jesus make a difference in how we live our lives? And are we still living our lives for ourselves? Or are we living our lives for Jesus, who cares for others more than himself?